Welcome to June's practicing clinic, and just to let you know a little bit about what goes on in these practice clinics, Online Academy subscribers send in questions to do with practicing or technique or style, whatever it may be, in advance, and I address those questions in this clinic. So if you're interested in becoming an Online Academy subscriber, check the description below and click the buttons, and we would be happy to welcome you on board. So the first question comes from Chloe, and it's relating to the Etude, Opus 76, number 2 by Sibelius. And Chloe says her hands are on the smaller side, so they get tired as I play halfway through the piece. Any suggestions to play the right hand melody in a relaxed manner? That's the first part of her question. And secondly, how much should I pedal for this piece? Some recordings play the left hand very short, some pedal heavily. Thirdly, how do I make this piece sound interesting? There's so much repetition. Okay, so let's have a little look at it. Let me play you the beginning. So notice there what I did, Chloe, with it, when the melodic line came back, I just held the rhythm on the repeat of the phrase, so it's not a carbon copy of the first time. So we do notice, let's just unpick it a little bit. We notice pedal markings, but they're light pedal markings. So what it looks like, the pedal comes up on the upper part of the left-hand chord. So bass, chord, bass, chord. So that would give you... But you could equally and justifiably play longer pedals. Change, change, change. The asterisk in pedal release markings is notoriously imprecise and often seems to depend on the typesetter rather than the composer. The other way of notating pedal, you know, with the little arrows up, down, didn't come in until much later, and it's actually much more precise. So, you know, tweak the pedaling a little bit, but you certainly do need some pedal. I wouldn't not pedal it. Just to address your point about the right hand, so if I do it first without the pedal, we've got staccato marks under slurs. So if we first of all just look and see what that involves, it's not staccato like this, but it's somewhere a loose legato, you might think, in this particular case. But you will notice that there's one element of my arm that is legato. The fingers may detach, but the arm itself, the way I move my arm, the way I shape the arm is going for connection. And I'm sensing, you could sense it in one of two ways. I would want to feel a circle. Can you see the wrist circle there? This is a classic wrist circle, actually, where the pinky comes up, and we spin round. So if you want to just get the sense of it, just start off by playing the pinky, just take an octave. Pinky comes up, the thumb goes down and round, up. So you've got this motion. So now here's the upward part of the motion. But the last pinky, the second pinky of the two, is on the way up. That will keep you absolutely free, I promise you. There is a kind of melodic line that we might feel. That kind of pops out there from the top notes, which are marked with a little accent. So that would be the way that I would approach it. So when you practice your right hand, you can practice it legato. Now, just one thing I would like to say, those two pinkies, you've got two pinkies in a row quite a lot, haven't you, here? So the first one is going to be low, and the second one's going to be high. The first one's going to be on the edge of the white key. The second one's going to be further along the white key. Do you see now? Out, in, down, up. So if you can get that sense. I would shape bar 2 with a little hairpin crescendo, diminuendo, just to be interesting. You ask about how to make the piece interesting. Those would be some of the things I would consider. Don't worry about the same music coming back. It's often not boring at all. It's rather comforting to hear the same music return. Your listener's going to say, ah, yes, I remember that. It was lovely the first time, and it's lovely the second time. You could experiment with the pedaling as I suggested, and maybe just holding the tempo back a tiny little bit before moving it. Those kinds of ideas should help you. Sigrun is asking about Schubert Opus 90 Impromptu, the A-flat major, the middle section. How can I best achieve a singing line in the upper voice of the right hand? Let me play just the line by itself. So I'm in, at this point of the piece, I'm in the trio, I'm in C sharp minor. So the line itself is quite, well, contained. Just 2 notes. And now a little bit more going on. Build. High point. So the first thing I would do would be to play the melodic line expressively, freely, expressively, with any old fingering, just to get the sense of, projection for the line. Then I would practice it with the fingering that you're going to end up with, which will probably be 5, and then 4, 5, 4. I've got the Geezer King edition, the Handler edition with the Geezer King fingering here, which is mostly good. I don't think I'd worry about all these substitutions that he has, and you do have to be careful about putting the 4th finger in the top of an octave. It's okay as long as you're not twisting your wrist here. So a 5th finger might be better. Just 5, 5, 5. Maybe not this 4-5 substitution, but go straight to a 5. In the end, what you'll do when you put it together with the other notes, you'll use weight, arm weight. So let's just, before we look at that, let's just look at the structure of this music. So we have a typical romantic texture, a melody line on the top, and a bass line or a bass note. I mean, you could call it a line, basses. So if you get a little bit of shaping from that as well, balance up the top line against the bass so that the bass is subservient to the top. The middle element is, in this instance, repeated note chords. So when I put that all together, we've got this kind of throbbing energy in the middle, this singing line on the top, supported by basses. Now I would give a little bit of space between the bass note and the first of the chords. It's not where I jump quickly to the chord. I need to give a little moment for this note, this sound to bloom before I go there. Nobody's going to hear it as distorted, but there is a rhythmic distortion there. This note is a little longer, these are shorter and quicker. So So let's just see, to answer your question, how to make that line sing at the top. really depends on many things. I would use the weight of my arm to drop into the G sharp. See what I'm doing there? Dropping down. So I have to make an initial upstroke in order to make the downstroke. Now, as I play the repeated chord, I'm rising up again. Let me show you. Come up so that I can come down again. Now, what I'm doing in bar 2, I would recommend doing this to start with. You might find you don't need quite so much of this movement, but if you hinge down, hinge up on the chord, down again on the next quarter note. The other thing to say is, given that the long notes are trapped in the pedal, you don't have to hold on manually to them. You may hold on to them if it's comfortable to do so, but you don't need to because the pedal's got them. So maybe by about there I've lifted my pinky away. Bar 4 is a resolution, isn't it? There's your dominant. So that chord's going to be a little softer. The G sharp's going to be a little softer. Now some more hinges. Can you see how that works? Down, up, down, up, down, up. The other thing I didn't talk about that is important is the control of the sound on the repeated chords. To get that sound working, you need to stay inside your key. You need to actually be at the bottom of the key. Don't release the keys all the way up to the top. But if these are too noisy, that's going to drown out your top. So the objective there would be to keep these actually quite light. So in terms of tonal hierarchy, we've got the melody line, which has the lion's share of the sound. The next level would be the bass note. Substantial, not loud, but firm enough to support the sound above. And then finally these chords, as light as you can get them. So I think those ingredients will help you to get that line singing above the quite substantial background. Orlando is asking about Billy Mayl's Marigold. And he's talking about the arpeggio figure that comes up on page 7, bar 5. He's redistributed it a little bit. That's great. I love redistributions. That means just sharing it out between the two hands. Let me see if I can show you. I don't think I would do that. I would want to do the right hand. Let me just put it in the context. Okay, so I think I would be more comfortable letting the right hand do this. I'm going to show you how I would choreograph it. You've got a pattern that's white keys and black keys mixed up together. So you've got your short one on the F. And because you've got black keys to play, we need to assume a higher position in the hand, in the wrist. If I try and play that all on the same level here, there's a lot of tension in 3 and 4, right? There would have to be because I'm not accommodating the terrain of the keyboard. But if I come up on 3 and 4, down again, up, that should immediately help you free that up, Orlando here. So let me just go through that again. Stay down on 1 and 2. But move across to 3 and 4. So my thumb is now underneath my hand. And as I play 3 and 4, you can see I'm slightly higher in my wrist. Down into thumb, up on 3 and 4, down into thumb, and up on the end of the group. Is that right? That's it, yes. So that would be my solution to it. I think it's all to do with the choreography, the up, down, in, out choreography, rather than redistributing it. So I hope that gives you a little bit of help. Cindy is asking, hi Graham, how to correct a 6-year-old student who cocks her wrist when playing the piano. I tried adjusting the height of the bench to keep a distance from the keyboard, but she still has this habit. Kindly advise. And there's a picture of this little girl with the wrist up here, and it looks very kind of like the bridge is collapsed here as well. So without actually seeing the person, it's difficult to give like an absolute. But I would say the first thing I would do is just to find the natural hand position just by swinging the arm. Some of you have seen me do this already. It's an absolute dead certain way of getting this to work. So what you do is you preferably stand up and then swing the arm just by your side. And you'll notice when you lift the arm up and put it on the keyboard that you've got your ideal hand position. So you do want the wrist to be on the level with the forearm. You don't want that. Neither do you want that. And certainly you don't want that collapsed bridge. But if you swing, you'll find that everything is lined up beautifully. Then now, given that she is 6 years old, she will probably have quite weak fingers at that age, of course. Small fingers, weak fingers. So you'd want to make sure that you, in general playing, you support that a lot with the weight from the arm. Do you see what's going there? So we don't want to use the fingers in isolation. So if we support that by just using a little bit from the wrist, drop down, come up, drop down again. This immediately strengthens the position. When she gets good at that, I'm playing a bit of black note there, but it doesn't matter what position you use, you can experiment with maybe making one downward movement and then follow it with an upward movement. And then possibly even 3 upward. Do you see what I'm doing there? Putting more notes in the upstroke. Rather than trying to do any playing from the fingers themselves, I would not recommend that. I hope that gives you something constructive. So Ginny is playing the Piazzola Milonga Del Angel, bars 33 to 44, struggles a little bit with the big chords. Can you teach me how to practice the big chords? And additionally, do we need pedal throughout this section? And if yes, can you advise how? Okay, so the section is, let me see if I can actually see it clearly enough to play it for you. So the notes as per the edition that I have found, that's sitting in front of me, you may find some of the notes are different in the left hand, depending on which score you're using. But generally we've got the chords in the right hand are marked, presumably by the composer, with a legato mark, and there's even a word there, legato, so we don't want to separate them. So let's have a look and see. Yes, there are diminished sevenths. Well, you've got the 3 diminished notes underneath, and there's a melodic line on the top. So I would certainly pedal these, but the first thing I would do for practice is just to extract your melodic line. And do you notice how free I am here in my wrist? I'm not tightening up anywhere. And if you can get a, excuse me, if you can get a legato there on the top, so much the better. That's where you'll get your legato from, the top line. Now you might have to let go there. Do you see what I'm doing there? You could either come down, up, down, or just continue up in that way. But I'm using my arm weight through a loose wrist. Now underneath, the underneath part of the chord is going to be, you're going to be using 1, 2 and 3, aren't you? So you could also practice that by itself loosely. You obviously can't join repeated notes, and you can't join when the hand has to jump like that. By hand, we can join by foot. So then on top of that, I'm getting some legatos where I can. Do you see here between 4 and 5? But one thing I hope you'll notice is that I'm using weight. Drop down, rise up. Now let's see what happens when I add my left hand. I must change pedal there and again here. So if I pedal according to those left hand notes, that gives you one possible pedaling. You could also pedal here so that you clear the F sharp from the G. Then you'd need to pedal again on the C and again on the next diminished chord. You don't need to pedal there. You would want to pedal here again. So that would be possibly either of those two possibilities for pedal would be good places to start. But in the end, I don't think you'd want to worry too much about sticking to either of those. You could come up with your own. Because I wouldn't probably pedal too much here. I'd want this line to be cleaner. It all depends on how dark and how mysterious you want it. Your ear may very well be okay trapping the F sharp with the G. Probably fine. In which case, just change with the left hand. Another thing that could be helpful with this, when you're working your right hand, is to practice the chords, building up the chords in layers. So start off with the melodic line. You can see how free that is. Then add the next note that comes down, so it would be the third finger. Do you see how I'm releasing my third finger? And then once you've gone through the passage, maybe a couple of bars at a time, add the next note down from that. There you have to release in the hand. Maybe you could connect from 5 back down to 4. Maybe you can't, in which case release and let the pedal make the connection. You could also practice the other way around, starting with the thumbs. Add the next note. Add the next note up. And finally add your melodic line. But keep very free here. That's the main thing. You don't want to tighten up and lock the hand at all. I wouldn't go for too much of a forte here. There's not enough notes to make too much of a sound. Just go for something very dark, you know. Dark and brooding. Catherine is asking about the Sonata in G, Opus 14, number 2 of Beethoven. My question is, how would you approach the polyrhythms in the first movement, bars 81 to 98? would you do a similar practice to your suggestion for the Fantaisie-Impromptu, which was a miracle fix? Well, I'm delighted to know that was a miracle fix for the Chopin. I'll show you that in a second. The famous spot is, yes, it's in the development section, isn't it? That notorious place where we've got threes in the right hand and twos in the left hand, and the left hand has the melodic line, the main line. However, I wouldn't consider the right hand an accompaniment as such. It's a typical Beethoven. He does this a lot of times, where you've got the background encroaching on the foreground, and it's not a polite, light background. I think what he's after here is an argument. The two characters involved in this piece, and if we had time we'd go back and look through, but there's been this kind of happy dialogue through. A little bit of tension there, musical tension I mean. So you've got a dialogue, a nice, gentle, civilized discussion with a bit of, tension in the air. And at this point in the sonata, it turns into a catfight. The right hand's arguing in triplets and the left hand's declaiming in tuplets. So it doesn't want to sound pretty in any way. It's almost violent. However, that doesn't really help you. It only describes what's going on in the music itself, the character of the music. So the first thing I would say is don't try and hide your right-hand triplets. But you will want to find a way of choreographing the groups of three, to make them comfortable. We don't play them with our fingers. We're going to find some movement of the arm. It could be a circle like this. So just to develop the sense for that, you might play 1 and 5, 1 to 5, with this feeling of direction to the pinky finger. And then slot in the third finger. That would be one form of choreography. The other way you could do that would be just to move from side to side. That's another possibility. The other possibility would be to use rotation between the 1 and 5. As long as you find a way of moving through the arm that stops the motions being finger bound. So in terms of putting them together, it's not difficult to do when it's slow. Let me jump to bar 83, because that's where the triplets are constant, the tuplets are constant. You can hear your nice cup of tea business going on there, but that's fine if it was slow. But because it's fast, we really haven't got a chance to think that fast or to hear that fast. So we have to automate the right hand. So once you've got comfortable with the motion that you're going to use, you should find that it drives itself. But for practice, I would just either block out the right hand, which I'm guessing you've probably done already. But that would be one way of doing it, or just playing the pinky finger. So that would be stage 1 of several stages. So the recommendation I made for the Fantaisie-Impromptu, you could certainly apply here, but you might want to do it in half bars. So let me just explain what this is. So using a metronome, you'd set the metronome to beat half bars. whatever that is in terms of speed. And you alternate until such time as you feel confident in trying it together. So can you imagine a metronome ticking along? I do half of our right hand and then half of our left hand. Alternate. I may alternate several times. It doesn't really matter how many times you go right, left, right, left, right, left. Eventually you'll feel, right, I think I'm ready to do it together. You'll try it together, and the first time you try it together, it'll probably go wrong. Do not panic. Do not worry. That's completely normal. Rather than try it again together immediately, go back to the alternations and then try it again. You'll probably go wrong again. And it may take you several practice sessions before you find the coordination that enables you to play together at the same time and preserve the rhythmic integrity that you're looking for. I highly recommend that way of practicing. So, non-stop. And that way, you will eventually have that working for you.